Hello, sweet friends, and welcome back to another read aloud from our book, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. We are going to add another chapter in our story today, but let's remember where we left off from last time. So last time we were with Veruca in the nut room. Do you remember that? So they were looking in the door and they saw all these squirrels. And Mr. Wonka told them they were specially trained squirrels that would pick up a walnut, knock on it. If it sounded hollow, it was a bad nut. And they would throw it over their shoulder into the hole on the floor and it would go down the garbage chute. Mr. Wonka explained he used squirrels because they were the only ones that could get the entire part of the nut, the walnut, out of the shell without breaking it. Well, spoiled Veruca decided she had to have one. Right then, right there, she wasn't going to wait. So when her dad said, "How much, Mr. Wonka? I will give you money right now," Mr. Wonka said no. And so when Veruca said, "But I want one," Mr. Wonka still said, "No, they're mine. I'm sorry, you can't have one." And when she heard that, instead of just saying, "Okay, I understand," she opened the door, which Mr. Wonka had told them, do not disturb the squirrels while they are working. She opened the door, and as soon as she did, all the squirrels stopped and looked at her. And we know what happened from there. They all jumped on her. The leader knocked on her head. She was a bad nut, and they threw her down the garbage chute. Her parents soon followed, trying to rescue her. Mr. Wonka informed them that the garbage chute goes to the incinerator, which burns garbage, but hopefully they had not lit the incinerator that day, which I think Veruca will be okay. But on the way down, the Oompa Loompas sang a song about all kinds of terrible smells and things that she might find herself with in the garbage chute. And maybe she might learn a lesson about not being so spoiled and bratty on the way down. So, our chapter today is chapter 25, The Great Glass Elevator. "I've never seen anything like it," cried Mr. Wonka. "The children are disappearing like rabbits. But you mustn't worry about it. They will all come out in the wash." Mr. Wonka looked at the little group that stood behind him in the corridor. There were only 2 children left now, Mikey TV and Charlie Bucket. There were also 3 grown-ups, Mr. and Mrs. TV and Grandpa Joe. "Shall we move on?" Mr. Wonka asked. "Oh, yes," cried Charlie and Grandpa Joe both together. "My feet are getting tired," said Mikey TV. "I want to watch television." Now, what do you think should be more exciting, television or being in the world's biggest chocolate factory that no one else is allowed to go in? What would you rather do? Hopefully you're not like Mikey TV. "If you're tired, then we shall take the elevator," said Mr. Wonka. "It's over here. Come on, in we go." He skipped across the passage to the pair of double doors. The doors slid open. The 2 children and the grown-ups went in. "Now then," cried Mr. Wonka, "which button shall we press first?" Take your pick." Charlie Bucket stared around him in astonishment. This was the craziest elevator he had ever seen. There were buttons everywhere. The walls and even the ceiling were covered all over with rows and rows and rows of small black push buttons. There must have been 1,000 of them on each wall and another 1,000 on the ceiling. And now Charlie noticed that every single button had a tiny printed label beside it, telling you which room you would be taken to if you pressed it. "This isn't just an ordinary up and down elevator," announced Mr. Wonka proudly. "This elevator can go sideways, long ways, slant ways, and any other way you can think of. It can visit any single room in this whole factory, no matter where it is. You simply press the button and zing, you're off." "Fantastic," murmured Grandpa Joe. His eyes were shining with excitement as he stared at the rows of buttons. The whole elevator is made of thick, clear glass, Mr. Wonka declared. Walls, doors, ceiling, floor, everything is made of glass so you can see out. But there's nothing to see, said Mikey TV. Choose a button, said Mr. Wonka. The two children may press one button each, so take your pick. Hurry up. In every room, something delicious and wonderful is being made. Quickly, Charlie started reading some of the labels alongside the buttons. See why it's important to read? The Rock Candy Mine, 10,000 feet deep, it said on one. Coconut ice skating rinks, it said on another. Then, strawberry juice water pistols. Toffee apple trees for planting out in your garden, all sizes. Exploding sweets for your enemies. Luminous lollies for eating in bed at night. Mint jujubes for the boy next door. They'll give him green teeth for a month. Cavity-filling caramels. No more dentists. Stick jaw for talkative parents. Wriggle sweets that wriggle delightfully in your tummy after swallowing. Invisible chocolate bars for eating in class. Sugar-coated pencils for sucking. Fizzy lemonade swimming pools. Magic hand fudge. When you hold it in your hand, you taste it in your mouth. Wonder how that one works. Rainbow drops. Suck them and you can spit in 6 different colors. Come on, cried Mr. Wonka. We can't wait all day. Isn't there a television room in all this lot? Asked Mikey TV. Well, certainly there's a television room, Mr. Wonka said. That button is over there. He pointed with his finger and everybody looked. Television chocolate, it said on the tiny label next to the button. Whoopee! Shouted Mikey TV. That's for me. He stuck out his thumb and pressed the button. Instantly, there was a tremendous whizzing noise. The doors clanged shut, and the elevator leaped away as though it had been stung by a wasp. But it leapt sideways, and all the passengers, except Mr. Willy Wonka, who was holding a strap from the ceiling, were flung off their feet onto the floor. Get up, cried Mr. Wonka, roaring with laughter. But just as they were staggering to their feet, the elevator changed direction and swerved violently around a corner, and over they went once more. Help! Shouted Mrs. TV. Take my hand, madam, said Mr. Wonka gallantly. There you are. Now grab this strap. Everybody grab a strap. The journey's not over yet. Old Grandpa Joe staggered to his feet and caught hold of a strap. Little Charlie, who couldn't possibly reach as high as the strap, put his arm around Grandpa Joe's legs and hung on tight. The elevator rushed on at the speed of a rocket. Now it was beginning to climb. It was shooting up on a steep, slanty course as if it was climbing a very steep hill. And gone over a precipice, it dropped like a stone, kind of like a roller coaster. And Charlie felt his tummy come right up into his throat, and Grandpa Joe shouted, Yippee! Here we go! And Mrs. TV cried out, The rope has broken! We're going to crash! And Mr. Wonka said, Calm yourself, my dear lady, and patted her comfortingly on the arm. And then Grandpa Joe looked down at Charlie, who was clinging to his legs, and he said, Are you all right, Charlie? Charlie shouted, I love it! It's like being on a roller coaster. And through the glass walls of the elevator as it rushed along, they caught sudden glimpses of strange and wonderful things going on in other rooms. Now here's the picture of them holding the straps in the top of the elevator. Do you see the buttons? Do you see Mikey TV with all his play guns all over him? And Charlie holding on to Grandpa Joe's legs? Would you want to ride on an elevator like that can go all different kinds of ways? It may be a little scary at first, but it also could be a little bit of fun. So the other rooms that they were whizzing past, there was an enormous spout with brown sticky stuff oozing out of it onto the floor. A great craggy mountain made entirely of fudge with Oompa Loompas all roped together for safety, hacking huge chunks of fudge out of the sides. A machine with white powder spraying out of it like a snowstorm. a lake of hot caramel with steam coming off of it, a village of Oompa Loompas with tiny houses and streets, and hundreds of Oompa Loompa children no more than 4 inches high playing in the streets. And now the elevator began to flatten out again, but it seemed to be going faster than ever, and Charlie could hear the scream of the wind outside as it hurled forward, and it twisted, and it turned, and it went up, and it went down, and "I'm going to be sick," yelled Mrs. TV, turning green in the face. "Please, don't be sick," said Mr. Wonka. "Try and stop me," said Mrs. TV. "Then you better take this," said Mr. Wonka, and he swept his magnificent black top hat off his head and held it upside down in front of Mrs. TV's mouth. "Make this awful thing stop," ordered Mr. TV. "Can't do that," said Mr. Wonka. "It won't stop until we get where we're going. I only hope there's no one using the other elevator at this moment." "What other elevator?" screamed Mrs. TV. "The one that goes the opposite way on the same track as this one," said Mr. Wonka. "Holy mackerel!" cried Mr. TV. "You mean we might have a collision?" "I've always been lucky so far," said Mr. Wonka. "Now I am going to be sick," yelled Mrs. TV. No, said Mr. Wonka, "not now. We're nearly there. Don't spoil my hat." The next moment, there was a screaming of brakes, and the elevator began to slow down. Then it stopped altogether. "Some ride," said Mr. TV, wiping his great sweaty face with his handkerchief. "Whew, never again," gasped Mrs. TV. Then the doors of the elevator slid open, and Mr. Wonka said, "Just a minute now. Listen to me. I want everybody to be very careful in this room. There is dangerous stuff around in here, and you must not tamper with it." Tamper means to mess or to touch it. Now, think about the other places that this group of people have been. Did everyone follow the don't touch, don't taste rule? No. That's how we lost Augustus Gloop in the Chocolate River. That's how we lost Violet Beauregard as she swole up like a giant blueberry. And that is also how we lost Veruca Salt in the nut room. Now they're getting ready to go into the television chocolate room. Now we know Mikey TV loves television. But Mr. Wonka has said, dangerous, don't mess with stuff. 2 very important things that our visitors need to keep in mind. So our next chapter is called The Television Chocolate Room. What do you think is going to happen in the television chocolate room? Do you think Mikey TV is going to really like this room? Do you think anyone is going to get into trouble? Kids aren't always the best listeners, are they? Sometimes even grown-ups get very excited, and we may forget the rules. But so far in our story, we have learned that it is very important, no matter how excited you are, that you follow Mr. Wonka's rules, because they keep you safe. I hope you enjoyed the part about the glass elevator. Hopefully, you will go and find someone in your house and tell them about this awesomely cool elevator that moves every way you can ever imagine. How would you have felt if you were in this elevator and Mr. Wonka told you, "Hey, there could be another one coming right toward us"? Would that have made you nervous? Or would you have not worried about it? Go find someone and tell them. All right, friends, so join us again next time for our next chapter about the television chocolate room, and we will find out what happens next on our adventure. I hope you have a great day, be kind to each other, and I will read to you next time. Bye!